That's how long the path to destiny takes when you realize the journey is already woven into the fabric of who you are. Alara adjusted the practical, earth-tone robes that felt less like clothing and more like armor forged by necessity. Her long, dark hair, braided tight against the wind, brushed her shoulder as she looked up. Before her stood the threshold of the Garden of the Gods, a chaotic, magnificent labyrinth of ancient stone pillars and cliffs that clawed at the sky. Beside her, Kael, her son, perhaps 12 years old, stood straight, his bright, curious eyes fixed on the entrance. He clutched a small, worn leather pouch. His simple, durable clothing was already dusted with the grit of their long trek. "Mother," Kael whispered, his voice steady despite the awe in his eyes. "The legends say this place tests those who enter. It knows why we've come." Alara placed a grounding hand on his shoulder. "It knows, yes, we seek the cavern of immortality, Kael, and the staff within it, not for ourselves, but to heal our valley. We must remember why we started." They took the first step, leaving the familiar soil behind for the cold, unforgiving stone of the garden. The air here was thin and smelled of ozone and forgotten time. They hadn't walked far when the ground itself seemed to ripple. Stone groaned, not with shifting weight, but with living breath. Before them rose a figure, Gorm the Stone Warden. He was monumental, a being whose eyes glowed with the deep, slow heat of the earth's core. His form was living rock, moss and crystal clinging to his shoulders. "Halt," Gorm rumbled, his voice like boulders grinding together. "Few pass this way. State your claim. Mortals, this is not a place for wishful wandering." Alara stepped forward, shielding Kael slightly. "We are Alara and Kael of the Sunken Dale. Our home withers. We seek the staff of renewal, promised to those desperate enough to retrieve it." Gorm tilted his heavy head. "Desperation fuels destruction, woman. The path to the cavern is dangerous, paved with tests of worthiness, not need. What do you offer the garden for safe passage?" Kael, surprisingly, didn't hesitate. He pulled the worn leather pouch from his belt, opening it to reveal a handful of smooth, river-polished stones, gifts he had collected since he was small. "These," Kael said clearly, holding them out, "they are the strongest memories of our home. We offer them so the garden remembers what beauty it is helping to save." Gorm paused. The glowing in his eyes intensified as he scanned the offering. He didn't take the stones. Instead, a crevice opened slowly in his stony face, almost a smile. "A memory of light is heavier than gold." Gorm conceded, "Pass, travelers. But listen closely to the wind paths. They are fickle guides." Gorm dissolved back into the cliff face, leaving them alone again. "The wind paths," Alara mused, looking toward a dizzying series of ledges and impossibly steep inclines. "How do we even see them?" As if in answer, a shadow swept over the stone. With a soft thump of hooves, a creature landed lightly on a nearby pinnacle. It was Era, a magnificent mountain goat, but this one possessed enormous, silver-tipped wings that looked woven from mist. Her fur was the color of high-altitude snow, and her eyes were liquid gold. Era lowered her head, giving a gentle, inquiring call. Kael gasped in delight. "Era. She's real." The legends said she only appears when the path is truly impossible. Era nudged Alara's hand gently with her nose, then turned, spreading her great wings. She leapt onto the precipice of a sheer drop, but she didn't fall. Instead, she trotted along an invisible current, a true wind path, visible only by the shimmering wake of her passing. "She's showing us the way," Alara realized, pulling Kael closer. We must follow exactly where she steps. Kael, no mistakes. The journey across the wind paths was terrifying and exhilarating. They had to leap across vast gaps, trusting the fleeting shimmer that Era created beneath their feet. Kael proved surprisingly agile, his lightness an advantage. Alara relied on her sheer determination and years of hardened resolve. Finally, Era brought them to the foot of the highest cliff. There, carved into the stone, was an opening dark, cool, and inviting. The air here vibrated with quiet power. Era gave them one last, knowing look, then ascended into the clouds, disappearing as quickly as she had arrived. Alara and Kael stood at the threshold. This was it, the cavern of immortality. Ready, Kael? Alara asked, gripping his hand tight. Ready. Mother, they stepped inside. The air was not cold, but warm, carrying the scent of rich earth and blooming life. The cavern was huge, illuminated by a soft, internal glow that came from the crystal formations high above. There were no traps, no guardians, no ornate altars. In the very center of the floor, not on a pedestal, but simply resting on the smooth stone, was the staff. It was not gleaming gold or powerful obsidian, but simple, old wood, looking like a branch pruned from an ancient oak, humming with quiet energy. They walked toward it slowly. As they stood over the staff, the internal glow of the cavern brightened, bathing them in pure, gentle light. And in that light, the truth settled over them, not as a voice, but as a deep, undeniable feeling in their hearts. Alara looked down at the staff, then back at Kael, whose eyes were wide with sudden understanding. The staff of renewal was not a tool to be wielded. It was the result of a choice. The willingness to face Gorim, the humility to accept Kael's offering, the courage to follow Era across nothingness. These acts, these intentions, were the renewal. The staff was merely a confirmation that they had already chosen the path of healing through sacrifice and hope. The staff was a choice, not a weapon, and they had already made it. Thank you for joining our journey. Follow for the next step in the adventure.